He pulled a drowning woman out of a freezing river with his bare hands and then walked away before she could even learn his name. No cameras, no headlines, no reward. Just a mechanic from a small Kentucky town who drove home in silence, tucked his 8-year-old daughter into bed, and never said a word about what he'd done. But the woman he saved. She was one of the most powerful CEOs in America. And when she started digging into who he really was, what she found shook her to the core. Because the man she almost dismissed as just a grease monkey had a past that most men couldn't survive. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Subscribe and follow along. You won't want to miss a single chapter. The rain had been falling for 3 hours straight by the time Daniel Carter turned his truck onto Route 9 heading home. Not the kind of soft spring rain that makes farmers smile. This was a Kentucky November storm, mean cold sideways, the kind that punches through your jacket and makes you feel like the sky itself is angry at you. Daniel had the heat turned up, one hand on the wheel, the other resting on a white paper pharmacy bag in the passenger seat. Children's Tylenol. Grape flavor because Lily refused the cherry. She'd been running a fever since noon, and he'd driven 30 minutes each way to the only pharmacy still open this late in Harlan County. That's the kind of thing you do when you're the only parent. You drive in the rain. You remember the flavor. You don't complain. The radio was low, some old country station playing a Merle Haggard song he half knew. He wasn't really listening. He was running through tomorrow's schedule in his head. 2 brake jobs and oil change on the Hendersons' pickup, and he'd promised Lily he'd fix her bicycle chain before the weekend. Garage, daughter, sleep, repeat. That was his life now. And some nights, most nights, honestly, that was enough. He almost missed it. A flash of headlights in his rearview mirror, moving too fast, fishtailing on the wet road, and then in the split second before his brain fully registered what his eyes were seeing. The black Mercedes sedan punched through the guardrail on the river curve like it was made of cardboard. The sound was enormous. Metal shrieking, glass exploding, and then silence just for a half second before the splash. Daniel's truck was stopped before he consciously decided to stop it. I was out the door before the engine finished dying. Later, he wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what he thought in those first seconds. People always want to know, what were you feeling? What went through your mind? And the honest answer, the one he'd only admit to himself at 3 in the morning, was nothing. There was no thinking. There was only moving. His boots hit the wet grass of the embankment, and he was already calculating 30, maybe 35 feet down to the water, the car half submerged and sinking fast, driver's side deeper, which meant the window on the passenger side was his best angle of approach. The river was black and furious and cold enough to stop your heart. He went in anyway. The shock of the water hit him like a wall 40 degrees, maybe less, and every nerve in his body screamed at him to turn back. He ignored it. He'd been trained to ignore it. He'd been trained for worse than this. He reached the car in 6 strokes. The driver's window was spiderwebbed, but hadn't blown out. He could see a shape inside a woman slumped against the airbag, dark hair fanned out as the water rose around her. Unconscious. The vehicle was tilting nose down, going under fast. Daniel drove his elbow into the cracked glass twice, 3 times, and on the 3rd strike, the window gave. Cold water poured in. He reached through, got both hands on the woman's shoulders and pulled. She was stuck, seatbelt still engaged. He felt for the release, found it, clicked it free, pulled again. She came loose all at once, and the momentum nearly took them both under. He wrapped one arm across her chest, kicked hard for the surface, and broke through into the rain and the dark and the roaring of the river. She wasn't breathing. He got her to the bank. He didn't remember the exact sequence of getting out of the water. He just remembered being on the grass on his knees, 2 fingers on her neck, finding a pulse that was there, but thin and thready. He tilted her head back, checked her airway, and began compressions. "Come on," he said quietly. Not a plea, more like an instruction. "Come on." On the 3rd cycle, she coughed a violent whole-body convulsion, and river water came up, and she was gasping, grabbing at the wet grass with her hands like she needed to hold on to the earth itself. Daniel sat back on his heels and let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. She was alive. He pulled out his phone, miraculously still functional, and called 911. Gave them the mile marker, described the vehicle, said the driver was conscious and breathing. Professional. Calm. The dispatcher tried to ask his name and he said, "Just send the ambulance," and ended the call. He sat with her in the rain. She was shaking, shock and cold both, and he shrugged off his jacket and put it around her shoulders, even though he was soaked to the bone himself. "Hey." He kept his voice steady. "Look at me. What's your name?" Her eyes were unfocused at first. Then they found his face. Dark eyes, sharp even through the days. The kind of eyes that were used to being in control. "Olivia," she said. Her voice was raw. "Olivia Bennett." The name meant nothing to him. "Okay, Olivia. You're out of the water. You're breathing. Ambulance is coming. I need you to stay awake and keep talking to me." "My car." "Gone. Don't worry about it." "There's a briefcase." "Gone," he said again. Firm, but not unkind. "None of that matters right now. Look at me. Are you in pain? Does your neck hurt, your back?" She did a slow inventory of herself, the way people do when they're trying to figure out if they're really okay. "My head," she said finally. "And my wrist." "Can you move your fingers?" She tried, winced. "Yes. Probably not broken, just banged up." He looked at the cut above her eyebrow, not deep enough to be dangerous, but bleeding freely from the cold. He pressed 2 fingers against it. "Hold pressure here." She reached up and covered his hand with hers. For a moment, just a moment, they stayed like that, strangers in the rain, one holding the other together. Then the ambulance lights appeared up on the road and Daniel stood. She grabbed his wrist. "Wait," she said. "Who are you?" He looked down at her. Soaked, shivering, a small woman who'd almost drowned in a black river on a Tuesday night in November. Somehow, even like this, there was something in her bearing, something that said she was not a person accustomed to being helpless. "Daniel," he said. "Daniel what?" He almost didn't answer. Old habit. The kind that came from years of operating in places where your full name was a liability. "Carter," he said. "Daniel Carter." "Where do you live?" "Down the road." "You work around here?" "I fix cars." She stared at him like she was memorizing his face, like she intended to find him again. He gently freed his wrist from her grip. "The paramedics will be down the bank in about 30 seconds, he said. "Let them help you. Don't try to stand up on your own yet." "You saved my life," she said. It wasn't a question. He didn't answer that. He just stepped back into the dark, climbed the embankment, got in his truck, and drove home. The pharmacy bag was still in the passenger seat. Grape-flavored Tylenol still intact. He stopped at a gas station on the way home, bought himself a cup of terrible coffee, changed into the spare work shirt he kept behind the seat, and pulled into his driveway at 11:42 p.m. His neighbor, Mrs. Greer, 70 years old and the most reliable woman in Harlan County, was sitting in the kitchen when he came in, reading a paperback and not asking questions, the way only the best neighbors know how to do. "She's asleep," Mrs. Greer said. "Fever's down a little." "Thank you," Daniel said. "You're soaking wet." "It's raining." She looked at him over her reading glasses with the expression of a woman who had learned not to push. "There's soup on the stove." "Thank you," he said again. He checked on Lily first. She was curled on her side, one arm wrapped around the stuffed dog she'd had since she was 3, her breathing slow and even. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching her chest rise and fall, the way he'd been doing since the day they brought her home from the hospital. He left the Tylenol on her nightstand in case she woke up feverish. Then he went to the kitchen, stood over the sink, and ate the soup standing up because he was too tired to sit. He didn't turn on the news. He didn't look up Olivia Bennett. He didn't do any of the things a different kind of person might do after an evening like that. He rinsed the bowl, dried his hands on the dish towel, and went to bed. He'd been asleep maybe 4 hours when Lily padded into his room and crawled in beside him, the way she still did when she wasn't feeling well. The way she'd done since she was small enough to fit in the crook of his arm without him even noticing. "Daddy," she said. My throat hurts." "I know, Bug." He reached over to the nightstand. He'd moved the Tylenol in some instinct, and shook out the right dose without even turning on the light. Here. She took it, made a face. It's grape. You said you wanted grape. I said I used to want grape. A very solemn statement from an 8-year-old. Now I want cherry. He almost laughed. Almost. We'll get cherry next time. She burrowed against his side. He could feel the warmth of her low fever against his arm. Were you out late? She asked. A little. Did something happen? The question caught him somewhere between his ribs. She was 8 years old, and she already had her mother's radar for him, that precise, quiet instinct for knowing when something had shifted. Nothing happened, he said, which was true the way he meant it. He was here. She was here. The sun was going to come up in a few hours. Okay, Lily said, and she believed him because she was 8, and because she trusted him, and that trust was the most valuable thing in his life. He lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the woman in the river, the way she'd grabbed his wrist, the way her eyes had focused on his face with that sharp, intense look of someone committing details to memory. Let her look, he thought. She won't find anything worth finding. He had spent 6 years building a life that was invisible on purpose. No social media, no interviews, no old contacts who might recognize his name or his face and say something they shouldn't. Just a garage, a house, a daughter, a community that knew him as Daniel from Carter's Auto and asked no further questions. He'd done things in his past that required him to be nobody now. Not because he was ashamed, not exactly, but because the men. He used to be the version of himself, trained to operate in the dark, to make decisions. No civilian should ever have to make that man belong to a world that he'd walked away from. And that world, in his experience, had a long memory. He closed his eyes. Lily's breathing slowed into sleep beside him. Tomorrow he had 2 brake jobs and a busted alternator and a bicycle chain to fix, and that was more than enough. The next morning, Daniel was under the Hendersons' pickup at 8 a.m. when Ray, his only employee, 24 years old, good with engines, hopeless with paperwork, came out of the office holding a phone like it might bite him. Boss, Ray said, hand me the 3/8. There's a woman outside. Ray's voice had taken on a specific quality. Cautious, like he was approaching something he didn't fully understand. She came in a car service, black SUV, nice suit, and she's asking for you by name. Daniel slid out from under the truck. What's her name? Ray glanced at the phone screen. She gave me a card. Says Olivia Bennett, Chief Executive Officer, Bennett MedTech. Daniel was quiet for a moment. He took the socket wrench out of his hand and set it on the floor. Tell her I'm with a customer. Ray stared at him. She says she drove an hour to... I heard you, Ray. He slid back under the truck. Tell her I'm with a customer. There was a pause. Then the sound of Ray's reluctant footsteps retreating toward the front. Then a different set of footsteps. Heeled shoes on the concrete floor. Confident. Purposeful. The walk of someone who did not accept "I'm with a customer" as a final answer. Mr. Carter. Her voice was exactly what he'd expected, composed, controlled, the kind of voice accustomed to running meetings and closing deals. But underneath it, if you knew what to listen for, there was something else. Something that had been shaken loose and hadn't quite settled back. He stayed under the truck for one more second. Then he slid out. She looked different in daylight. No blood, no river water, no emergency room pallor. She was dressed in a charcoal blazer, hair pulled back, a small white bandage above her left eyebrow. Her right wrist was wrapped in a support brace. She looked like a person who had walked through something terrible and refused to let it show. But her eyes, those same dark, sharp eyes, were looking at him with an expression he recognized. Not gratitude exactly. Something harder than gratitude. Something closer to assessment. You left before the ambulance got to me, she said. You were breathing on your own, he said. You didn't need me anymore. I needed your name for the report. You knew my name. First name only. He wiped his hands on the shop rag and said nothing. She took a half step closer. Not aggressive, strategic. The move of a person who understood that space was a negotiation. I want to thank you properly, she said. That's not necessary. You saved my life, Mr. Carter. Anybody would have. No. Her voice was quiet, but the word landed hard. They wouldn't. I was in that water for approximately 4 minutes before you reached me. The average person who went in after me in those conditions would not have gotten me out. They would have tried, and they likely would have drowned with me. She paused. What you did was not ordinary. He held her gaze. You're alive. That's enough. I'd like to compensate you. No. I have resources that could. No, he said again. Same tone. Not angry, not rude, just absolute. She studied him. He could see her recalibrating. She was used to solving problems with money and leverage, and she was encountering a man for whom neither of those things was useful, and that was a variable she hadn't planned for. Can I at least buy you a cup of coffee? She said. He almost said no to that too. Then Ray appeared in the doorway of the office with an expression that said, Please, boss, don't be weird about this. There's a diner 2 blocks down, Daniel said. The diner was the kind that had been in the same location since 1971, run by the same family for 3 generations, with coffee that was strong enough to strip paint and pie, that was worth driving across the county for. They sat in a corner booth. The waitress, a woman named Deb, who'd known Daniel since he moved to Harlan 6 years ago, gave Olivia one long look and said nothing, which was her particular form of approval. Olivia wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. Tell me about yourself, she said. Nothing to tell. You're former military. He didn't move, didn't react. What makes you say that? The way you assessed the accident scene before you entered the water. The way you checked my airway and vitals. The way you positioned me on the bank. She listed these things without drama, like she was reading from a report. And the way you left before anyone could document your presence. That's not civilian instinct, that's training. He drank his coffee. You're observant. I'm a CEO. I didn't get there by missing things. She tilted her head. Navy Army. Past tense, he said. All right, past tense. She accepted that. And now you fix cars in Harlan County. I own the garage, he said. It's different. The corner of her mouth moved almost a smile. Fair enough. She looked down at her coffee. The almost smile faded. I owe you my life, Mr. Carter. I'm not good at owing people things. It makes me uncomfortable. Then consider the debt cleared, he said. You don't owe me anything. You have a daughter, she said. He went very still. Where'd you hear that? Your employee mentioned her when I was waiting. She read his expression and raised one hand slightly. He didn't say anything else, just that you'd gone out last night to get medicine for your daughter. She paused. Is she all right? The question was so simple, so human. From a woman who'd been minutes from death the night before, asking about his sick kid. Something in his chest shifted just slightly. She's better, he said. Fever broke this morning. Good, Olivia said. And she meant it, he could tell she meant it, and that was the thing that surprised him. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the rain had stopped. The street was wet and gray and quiet. I'm not going to stop being grateful, she said finally, even if you won't let me show it. You don't have to stop, he said. You just don't have to do anything about it. She looked at him with those sharp, complicated eyes. You're a very unusual man, Mr. Carter, she said. He finished his coffee and left the tip. Drive safe going back, he said, and he meant it too. He didn't think about her for the rest of that day. He finished the brake jobs. He closed up the garage at 6. He picked Lily up from school. She was well enough to go back. Color returned to her cheeks, and she talked the entire drive home about a project she was doing on migratory birds, and he listened to every word. He made spaghetti for dinner. They ate at the kitchen table. He helped her with the bird project until 8 o'clock, then read to her for 20 minutes until she fell asleep with the book still open on her lap. He moved it carefully to her nightstand. He turned out the light. He sat in his living room in the dark for a while, the way he did sometimes, not thinking exactly, just letting the day settle. He hadn't thought about the Navy in a long time. Hadn't needed to. But sitting there in the quiet, he could feel it, something shifting. Something that had been still for 6 years, beginning to move again. He didn't know what it was yet. He just knew the feeling. He'd felt it before in places far from Kentucky, in the moment before everything changed. He got up, checked the locks on the door's front back garage the way he did every night. He went to bed. And in the morning, the garage called and the day began again. But somewhere an hour away, Olivia Bennett was making phone calls. And what she was finding out about the man who saved her life was only the beginning. The beginning of something neither of them could walk back from. 3 days passed before Olivia Bennett made the first phone call. Daniel knew this not because he was watching for it, but because on the 4th morning, a Thursday clear and cold, the kind of November day that reminded you, winter was no longer a warning, but a fact. Ray came into the garage holding a manila envelope and wearing the expression of a man who was deeply confused about his own life choices. FedEx, Ray said. Overnight. Daniel was elbow deep in a transmission at the time. He didn't look up. Who's it from? Ray turned the envelope over. Bennett MedTech, corporate address Chicago. Daniel wiped his hands slowly on the shop rag. He took the envelope and set it on the workbench without opening it. Thank you, Ray. Ray stood there. You're not going to open it. Later. Boss. Ray lowered his voice like there was someone else in the garage who might hear, which there wasn't. That woman, the one who came in here Tuesday, I looked her up. I just want you to know. I looked her up and she runs a company that's worth like, Ray. A lot of money is what I'm saying. I know. And she sent you a FedEx. I see that. Ray looked at the envelope. Looked at Daniel. Made a decision the way young men do when they realize a conversation is over. Okay, he said, and went back to the front desk. Daniel finished the transmission. He ate his lunch, a sandwich from home, same as every day, sitting on the tailgate of a customer's truck. He read the newspaper the way he always did, front to back, the actual paper, because he didn't own a smartphone and had no particular interest in getting one. He opened the envelope at 2:17 in the afternoon. Inside was a single card. Heavy stock, cream-colored, the kind of stationery that cost more per sheet than most people paid for a meal. The message was handwritten, which surprised him. Mr. Carter, I asked my assistant to send a check. She told me you'd probably send it back. She's usually right about people. So instead, I'm writing this myself. There's nothing in this envelope but a card and my number. If you ever need anything at all, please call. Not because I owe you. Because I'd like to. O.B. He read it twice. Then he put it in his wallet behind his driver's license, the way he kept things he might need again, but didn't want to think about right now. I went back to work. That evening, something happened that Daniel Carter would think about for weeks afterward. He was helping Lily with her homework at the kitchen table, long division, which she approached with the same focused hostility she directed at anything she didn't immediately understand when she stopped mid-problem and looked up at him. Daddy, she said, do you think people can tell when someone is good? He kept his eyes on the worksheet. What do you mean? Like, without knowing them, just by looking. She tapped her pencil against the table the way she did when she was working something out. Emma at school said her mom can always tell if a person is nice or mean just by looking at their eyes. And I was thinking, can you do that? He considered the question seriously, the way he always tried to with her, because she deserved serious answers, even at 8 years old. Sometimes, he said. Not always. Sometimes people work hard to hide what they are. But you can tell right. She said it with complete certainty, like it wasn't a question. You always know. He looked at her. What makes you say that? She shrugged, the elaborate shrug of a child who has more wisdom than vocabulary to express it. Because you're always right about people, she said. Like Mr. Patterson, you said he was grumpy but not mean. And Mr. Ray, you said he was going to be okay, even when he was messing everything up. And you were right both times. He didn't say anything for a moment. Do your division, Bug, he said finally. She went back to the worksheet, but she was smiling. He looked at the page of numbers and thought about dark eyes in the rain. Sharp eyes. Eyes that had focused on his face with the intensity of someone trying to find a lie and finding none. He thought about the handwritten card in his wallet. He thought, leave it alone. He went to bed thinking the same thing. He woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of his phone ringing. Not the cell phone, the landline. The one he kept by the bed because it was the number he'd given the school in case of emergencies, and because old habits died hard, and certain kinds of men always slept with a phone within reach. He picked up on the second ring. Carter. Silence. Then, "I'm sorry. I didn't know who else to call." He was fully awake in less than a second. Not groggy, not slow, just awake, like a switch thrown. "Olivia, I found your home number. I'm sorry, I know that's strange. I didn't know." A pause. Her voice was steady, but it was the kind of steady that costs effort. The kind that's one bad sentence away from breaking. "I think someone followed me home tonight." He sat up. "Are you in your house?" "Yes." "Doors locked, alarm on?" "Yes and yes." "Okay." He was already moving feet on the floor, reaching for the jeans draped over the chair, the same way he'd gotten dressed 1,000 times in the dark, in places where moving slow could get you killed. "Tell me exactly what happened." She described it with the precision of a person who had spent the last hour replaying every detail. The black SUV that had been 2 cars back the entire way from her office. The one that didn't turn when she turned, didn't slow when she slowed, and then parked 100 yards from her building, and sat there with the engine running until the doorman noticed and it drove away. "Could be nothing," Daniel said. "Could be," she said. "Except that the same SUV was in the parking garage at my office building yesterday." He stopped moving for a moment. "Same plates. I didn't get close enough, but same model, same color, same small dent on the rear panel." He was quiet. "I know how this sounds," she said. "I know. I sound paranoid." "You sound like someone who pays attention," he said. "There's a difference." He pulled on his shirt. "Have you called the police?" A pause. "Not yet." "Why?" Another pause, longer this time. "Because the people I'm afraid of, I don't know how far their reach goes, and I don't know who I can trust." Her voice dropped on that last word just slightly, like it cost her something to say it. "I know I can trust you. I don't know exactly why I know that, but I do." Daniel stood in the dark of his bedroom. Through the wall he could hear the faint sound of Lily's sleep, the barely audible rhythm of it, steady and innocent and completely dependent on him making the right choices. "Are you somewhere safe right now?" he said. "I think so, yes." "Then try to sleep. Keep your phone next to you. If anything changes, if you hear anything, see anything, you call 911 first, and then you call me. Understand?" "Yes. In the morning we're going to talk. Really talk. Because I think there's something you haven't told me yet." A silence that confirmed exactly that. "Good night, Olivia," he said. "Good night, Daniel," she said. And she said his name like it was something she was holding carefully. He hung up. He stood in the dark for a long moment. Then he walked down the hall and checked on Lily, deep asleep. Perfectly still, the stuffed dog tucked under her arm, and he stood in her doorway for a count of 10 before going back to his own room. He didn't sleep again that night. He sat in the chair by the window and thought about patterns, about cause and effect, about certain kinds of trouble didn't announce themselves. They crept in at the edges in small coincidences and almost accidents that you could always explain away until suddenly you couldn't anymore. A car off a bridge in a rainstorm. An SUV that followed her home. He thought it started before I found her in the river. He thought she doesn't know that yet. He thought she needs to know that. By 6 o'clock, he had a plan. Not a complex one. Just the first steps, the way he always worked: clear the immediate danger, establish communication, gather information. One thing at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself. He called Ray at 6:30 and told him to handle the morning opening. Ray didn't ask questions, one of Ray's better qualities. Then he drove to the diner, got there before it opened, sat on the tailgate of his truck in the parking lot, and waited. Olivia pulled up at 7:58. She'd driven herself this time, no car service, no driver or rental. He noticed, not her personal vehicle. Smart. She'd thought about it. She looked tired in the way that had nothing to do with sleep, and everything to do with the specific exhaustion of being afraid and trying not to show it. She sat down across from him in the same corner booth. He had already ordered 2 coffees. He pushed one toward her. She wrapped her hands around it and looked at him and said, "How much do you know about my company?" "Nothing," he said. "Tell me." She took a breath and told him. Bennett MedTech had started 12 years ago in a lab at Northwestern with Olivia and 2 research partners and a grant that barely covered their overhead. The company's original mission, still the mission, still the thing she believed in with every decision she made, was to develop early detection medical technology for pediatric diseases. Kids. Specifically kids, because pediatric diagnostic tools were chronically underfunded, and because she had watched her younger brother go undiagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition until he was 11 years old, and the damage was already done. She said this last part quickly, like she was accustomed to getting through it fast and moving on, but her jaw tightened in a way that told him it still cost something every time. 18 months ago, the research division completed a prototype diagnostic algorithm that could detect 3 specific childhood autoimmune conditions in infants with 91% accuracy, roughly 3 years earlier than current standard diagnostic timelines. 3 years earlier meant treatment could begin before neurological damage occurred. It meant outcomes that were in clinical terms dramatically better. In human terms, it meant children who would walk and talk and grow up without the complications that arrived when these conditions went undetected. The data was extraordinary. The clinical trials were extraordinary. The board of directors had approved moving forward with the FDA submission process 18 months ago. And then nothing. She stopped there and looked at Daniel over her coffee mug. "What do you mean nothing?" he said. "I mean the process slowed, then stopped. Then I was told by our chief operating officer that the FDA submission had been delayed pending additional internal review." She set the mug down. Which made no sense because I had personally reviewed every element of that submission. So I started asking questions, and the answers I got were inconsistent. And then the data files I was asking to see became unavailable. And then my COO told me very politely, very professionally, that I should perhaps step back from this particular project and focus on the broader strategic direction of the company. Daniel looked at her. "What's your COO's name?" "Richard Hale." She said it the way you say a name when the taste of it has gone bad. "He's been with the company for 4 years. He came from PharmaLex, which is one of our primary competitors in the adult diagnostic space." "And you think Hale is the problem?" "I think Hale is part of the problem," she corrected. "I don't know how much of the problem. I don't know how far it goes." She pressed her lips together. "What I know is that 6 weeks ago I found a set of financial records in a shared drive that were not meant for me to find. And what those records showed was a series of payments, significant payments, made from a shell company to 3 members of my board of directors." Daniel said nothing. Let her keep going. "And 2 days after I found those records, my car went off Route 9 into the Harlan River," she said. The diner was quiet around them. Deb refilled their coffees without being asked and moved away without a word. "You think the accident was deliberate," Daniel said. "The mechanic who looked at what was left of the car said the steering had been interfered with," she said. "His word was compromised. He couldn't say definitively the car was submerged for 6 hours, but he said the failure pattern was inconsistent with normal mechanical failure. You have this documented. I have a photograph of his written assessment." She pulled out her phone, slid it across the table. He looked at the photo, read it twice, slid the phone back. "The mechanic," he said. "You trust him?" "He's been my family's mechanic for 20 years, she said. "And he called me as soon as he figured it out, even though he knew what it might mean. He didn't have to do that." Daniel nodded slowly. He wrapped both hands around his coffee mug. He looked at a spot on the table between them and thought for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" he said. She met his eyes. "Because you already know something is wrong. You knew it the second I walked in here this morning. I can see it in your face." He didn't confirm or deny that. "And because," she continued, "you are the only person in my current situation who has absolutely nothing to gain from lying to me." He almost smiled at that. Not quite. "I'm a mechanic from Kentucky." "You are not just a mechanic from Kentucky," she said. Not an accusation. A statement of fact delivered with the quiet certainty of someone who had spent 3 days gathering information. And we both know it. He studied her. The tiredness in her eyes. The controlled precision of how she spoke every word placed intentionally. Nothing wasted the speech pattern of someone who had learned to be exact because exactness was a form of protection. "Who else knows what you've told me?" he said. "No one I can verify I trust," she said. "Lawyers. My personal attorney. But I haven't given her the financial documents yet. I was trying to understand what I had before I showed it to anyone else. Copies of the documents. Encrypted, stored off my company servers." He nodded. That was smart. Smarter than most people would have been under pressure. "Okay," he said. "Okay." She looked at him like she was trying to read a language she hadn't fully learned yet. "Okay, what?" "Okay, you need to call your attorney today," he said. "Not tomorrow, today. Before you go back to your office. You need to give her access to those documents. And then," he paused, "then we need to figure out what you actually have and who the players are." She was quiet for a moment. She said. "I'm not a lawyer," he said, "and I'm not law enforcement, and I want to be very clear about what I am and what I'm not." He held her gaze. "But I understand certain kinds of situations, and this one has a shape I recognize." "What shape is that?" He picked up his coffee. "Someone with power decided your invention cost them something, and now they're trying to make you cost less than the invention." He set the mug down. "It's not complicated, it's just dangerous." Something shifted in her expression. The controlled precision cracked just slightly, just for a second, and under it was something raw and exhausted and quietly furious. "Those records I found," she said, her voice lower now. "The payments to my board members, I ran the numbers. I cross-referenced the timing." She stopped. "Tell me," he said. "The payment started 14 months ago," she said, "which is 2 months before the FDA submission process stopped." She pressed her fingertips flat against the table. "They didn't try to kill the technology after it was proven. They got to my board before the submission even went through. Someone outside my company knew how good that technology was going to be before anyone was supposed to know, and they moved to stop it a year and a half ago." She looked at him. "That's not someone reacting to a threat, Daniel. That's someone who planned this." The silence in that moment was a specific kind of silence. The kind Daniel knew well. The kind that follows a revelation that reorders everything you thought you understood. "How many children?" he said. She blinked. "I'm sorry." "The technology, the early detection. How many children would it reach if it went through?" She was still for a moment. "Our conservative projections were 6,000 cases per year in the United States alone, in the first 2 years. And the current detection timeline without the technology, what's the outcome difference?" Her jaw tightened. "In approximately 30% of late detected cases, there's irreversible neurological damage." He did the math in his head. So did she. Neither of them said the number out loud. "Okay," Daniel said again. This time the word carried different weight. She watched him. "You're not going to tell me this is too much, that I should hire security and let lawyers handle it." "That's part of what needs to happen, yes," he said. "But no, I'm not going to tell you it's too much. Most people—" She stopped. Started again. "My COO, my board members, my friends, the ones who know something is wrong. Every single one of them has told me to be careful, to protect myself, to be strategic." A pause. "What they're really saying is, let it go." "I know," Daniel said. "They don't say it directly, but that's what they mean." Her voice was very controlled and very quiet, and underneath the control was something that had been compressed for a long time. "They mean this is too powerful. The people on the other side are too connected. The cost to you personally will be too high. They mean, is this really worth it?" She looked at him. "I think about those children," she said. "The ones who would have been detected in time. And then I think about my brother at 11 years old, and what he looked like when my mother finally got him diagnosed, and what the doctor said when she asked why it had taken so long." A pause. "And I can't let it go." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You shouldn't." Something in her face changed when he said it. Not relief exactly. Something harder than relief and more earned. The expression of a person who has been alone with a decision for so long that simply hearing someone else confirm it is the right one feels almost physical. "Tell me about the board members," he said. "Names, backgrounds, how long they've been on your board." She told him. He listened the way he had been trained to listen, not just to the words, but to the order she chose them in, the ones she emphasized, the ones she moved past quickly. He built a picture in his head. 3 board members. 1 COO. Payments from a shell company that, if traced properly, would likely connect back to a larger pharmaceutical interest with a significant financial stake in the current early detection market being exactly where it was. People weren't going to make less money if better pediatric diagnostics existed, but certain people were going to make significantly less money, and certain people had decided that was unacceptable. "I need to ask you something," Daniel said. "All right." "The night your car went off the road," he paused. "Were you supposed to be on Route 9? She frowned. "What do you mean? Is it your usual route?" She opened her mouth, closed it. He watched her remember. "No," she said slowly. "I usually take the interstate. I took Route 9 because there was a closure construction, I think. I saw it on the GPS and rerouted." "Did the reroute happen automatically, or did you approve it?" The frown deepened. "Automatically. I followed the navigation." "What navigation system?" "My car's built in." She stopped, very still. "The company car. The one that's registered to Bennett MedTech." He watched her face as it arrived, the understanding spreading cold and deliberate, like she was watching a map fill in around her. "The route change," she said. "Someone could have pushed a GPS reroute to your vehicle's navigation system," he said. "Yes, if they had access to the fleet management software, which anyone with Bennett MedTech fleet credentials would have." Her voice had gone quiet, that very intelligent people's voices go quiet when they are processing information that is too large and too terrible. "That's not Daniel. That's not someone trying to intimidate me. That's not someone sending a message." "No," he said. "That's an attempt to—" "Yes," he said. She sat with that for a moment. Just sat with it. He let her. Didn't try to manage it or soften it or redirect. "Okay," she said finally. Her voice was steady. Her hands were steady. But her eyes had the look of someone who had just recalculated every assumption about her own safety and arrived at a number that was much lower than she'd thought. "What do we do?" And that word that was the word that changed things. Not "what should I do?" Not "what do you recommend?" Not the executive's instinct to take counsel and then decide alone. She said "we." And Daniel Carter, who had spent 6 years learning to be invisible, who had built an entire life around the principle of "not my problem, not my fight. Stay small, stay quiet, keep Lily safe." Daniel Carter said, "First thing, your attorney, today. Non-negotiable." "Agreed." "Second, you don't go back to your office alone, not until we know the scope of this." She hesitated at that. "Olivia." He said her name directly. "You understand what I just told you about the GPS?" A pause. "Yes. Then you understand that whoever did this is not afraid of consequences, which means they are either very confident or very desperate. Either way." "Either way," she said quietly, "they'll try again." "Yes." Deb appeared with a coffee pot, looked at the two of them, silently refilled both mugs, and walked away with the discretion of a woman who had worked in a diner for 30 years and understood that some conversations needed no interruption. Olivia stared at her coffee. Something moved across her face. Complex, compressed, the expression of the person who had been carrying something very heavy alone for a very long time and was now carefully, reluctantly setting part of it down. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask." "Why are you helping me?" She looked at him. "And don't say anyone would, because we established that's not true." He considered the question honestly, the way he tried to with Lily, because she deserved a real answer too. "Because you're right," he said finally. "And because children are dying who don't need to be. And because whoever did this counted on the fact that the right thing to do was too difficult and too dangerous for anyone to bother. He picked up his mug. "I don't like that calculation," he said. "I never have." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded just once, the way someone nods when they have recognized something true. "Tell me about the shell company," he said. And she did. They sat in that corner booth for another 2 hours. Deb brought food they barely touched. The morning rush came and went around them. The bell above the door rang 100 times. Daniel listened and asked questions and built a picture piece by piece, methodical and quiet, of a conspiracy that had been running for over a year, that had reached inside her boardroom and her company fleet, and possibly much further operated by people with enough money and enough desperation to arrange what looked like an accident on a Kentucky highway. And as he listened, something he had kept locked for 6 years. Not anger exactly, not ambition, but a particular kind of readiness. The deep trained certainty that some situations require someone who is willing to stand between the wrong thing and its intended target began to unlock quietly, without fanfare, in the center of his chest. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't wanted it. But the woman across from him had not asked to be driven off a bridge in the dark either, and 6,000 children a year had not asked to go undiagnosed. He thought of Lily. 8 years, fever-breaking, doing long division with focused hostility, asking him if you could tell good from bad just by looking at someone's eyes. "You always know," she'd said, like it wasn't a question. He looked at Olivia Bennett across the table in a diner in Harlan, Kentucky. "All right," he said. "Here's what we're going to do." She leaned forward slightly. Ready. Whatever she had been before she walked through the door of his garage 4 days ago, she was something harder now, something that had been through fire and chosen not to soften. "Tell me," she said. He told her, and 30 miles away, in a glass-walled office, in a building that bore her name, a man named Richard Hale picked up his phone and made a call. His voice was low and clipped, and entirely composed the voice of a man who had done difficult things many times before. "The Bennett problem isn't resolved," he said. A pause. "Then resolve it," said the voice on the other end. "All of it. This time, make sure it's clean." Hale's phone call lasted 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Daniel didn't know that yet. He wouldn't know it for another 72 hours, and by the time he did, everything would already be in motion, in ways that couldn't be stopped, only survived. What he knew on Thursday morning sitting across from Olivia in that corner booth was that the shape of the problem had become clear. And clear problems in his experience were manageable problems. It was the ones that stayed blurry that got people killed. He drove back to the garage at 10:15. Called Ray, told him to reschedule the afternoon's appointments. Ray, to his credit, asked 0 questions. Daniel had hired him partly for that reason. He sat in his office, a generous term for the 8x10 room off the bay floor, with a metal desk and a filing cabinet and a window that looked out at the parking lot, and he made 2 phone calls of his own. The first was to a man named Marcus Webb in Lexington. They had served together for 3 years in a context Daniel would not describe to anyone in Harlan County. Marcus now ran a private security consulting firm, which was one of those titles that could mean many things depending on who was asking. Daniel trusted him because Marcus was one of exactly 4 people alive who knew the full shape of who Daniel Carter used to be. Marcus picked up on the second ring. "Carter." A pause. "It's been a while." "I know. I need a favor." "You need more than a favor," Marcus said. "You need whatever this is to be clean, and I need to not know the details." "It's not that kind of situation." "Then what kind is it?" "Information," Daniel said. "I need a background run on a man named Richard Hale, COO of Bennett MedTech Chicago. Previously Pharmalex, I don't have the division. And I need a corporate structure trace on a shell company." He read off the name Olivia had given him from memory. "I need to know who owns it and who it's paying." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "This is connected to Bennett MedTech, as in Olivia Bennett." "You know who she is." "Everybody knows who she is, Daniel. She's been in the business news for the last week because she apparently survived a car accident that her own company's PR department has been very aggressively calling an accident." A pause. Is that the favor? Part of it. Another pause. Longer. You pulled her out of the river. It wasn't a question. Daniel didn't answer it. All right, Marcus said. Give me 48 hours. 24, Daniel said. 36, Marcus said. Done, thank you. Carter. Marcus's voice shifted, dropped half a register the way it used to when the mission briefing was over and the real conversation started. How deep is this? Daniel looked at the window, at the parking lot, at the gray November sky above the tree line. Deep enough, he said. You back in the life? No, Daniel said. And then after a beat, I don't know. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. Then, how's the girl? She's good, Daniel said. She's really good. Keep it that way, Marcus said and hung up. The second call was shorter. He called his neighbor, Mrs. Greer, and asked if she could pick Lily up from school for the next few days and keep her close. He didn't say why. Mrs. Greer didn't ask. She just said, "Of course, Daniel," in the voice of a woman who had lived long enough to understand that when a good man asks a simple favor without explanation, the explanation is usually something he's protecting you from. He hung up and sat for a moment. Then he opened the bottom drawer of his desk, moved aside the vehicle registration files, and took out a locked metal box. He hadn't opened it in 4 years. The key was on his keychain behind the garage key, the kind of thing that looks like it belongs there until you look closely. Inside the box, a burner phone still charged that he tested once a year. A folded piece of paper with 6 phone numbers on it, none of them labeled. A photograph of Lily at age 3, which had no tactical purpose whatsoever, and was in there simply because he'd put it there the day he locked the box and couldn't bring himself to take it out. And a compact government-issued Glock 19 with 1 loaded magazine, the serial number intact, because he'd done nothing wrong and had nothing to hide. He looked at all of it for a moment. He put the Glock and the spare magazine in his jacket, locked the box, put it back. He picked up the burner phone and sent one text to Olivia's personal number, the one she'd given him at the diner, not the corporate line. 3 words. Call your lawyer now. 3 seconds later, his regular phone buzzed. Her reply. Already on with her. She's coming to me today. He put both phones in his pocket and went back to work. Because the brake pads on the Henderson truck still needed to be finished, and because routine was armor, and because Daniel Carter had learned a long time ago that panic was the enemy of survival, and survival required keeping your hands busy and your mind clear. At 3:45 that afternoon, Lily got home to Mrs. Greer's house and sent him a text from the school-issued tablet that he allowed her to use for exactly this purpose. Hi Daddy, Mrs. Greer made snickerdoodles. Can I have 2? He texted back. 1 now, 1 after dinner. She sent back a drawing of a frowning face that he understood to be a negotiating position. He sent back a drawing of a hand holding up 2 fingers, which she interpreted correctly as his final offer, and she accepted. He ate dinner at the kitchen table at 6 o'clock. He drove to pick Lily up at 7, listened to 30 uninterrupted minutes about a disagreement she'd had with a classmate over the correct way to feed a class hamster, made the appropriate parental responses, and tucked her in by 8:30. He sat by the window. He thought about Richard Hale. He thought about a steering column compromised. About a GPS reroute deliberately triggered. About the specificity required to arrange both those things. The access, the timing, the knowledge of her exact schedule. Someone inside her company. Had to be. The level of access required meant someone with keys to systems that weren't publicly accessible. He thought about Olivia sitting across from him at that diner table, with the controlled precision of someone who had been holding the whole weight of this alone. And he thought about the exact moment she'd said, "We," not as a slip, but as a decision. He thought she trusted me before she had reason to. And then more quietly, and I'm still not sure she knows what she's trusting. His phone rang at 11:22 p.m. Olivia. He picked up immediately. What happened? My attorney found something. Her voice was controlled but faster than usual, the cadence of someone who has received information that is still being processed in real time. The shell company, the one making payments to my board members. She traced the ownership structure. It goes through 3 LLCs, but the beneficial owner is a holding company called Aldrin Capital Partners. I know that name, Daniel said. And he did vaguely from the financial pages of newspapers he read front to back. Aldrin was a private equity firm, significant healthcare portfolio. They're investors. They were, she said. Past tense. They divested their stake in Bennett MedTech 8 months ago, which seemed like routine portfolio management at the time. A pause. My attorney looked at when Aldrin acquired a majority stake in VitaDiag. What's VitaDiag? Our primary competitor in the pediatric early detection space, she said. They acquired it 14 months ago, 2 months before the FDA submission process for our technology mysteriously stalled. The timeline assembled itself in his head, clean and brutal. Aldrin Capital had moved out of Bennett MedTech after quietly purchasing their competitor. Then through the shell company, they began paying 3 members of Olivia's board to freeze her technology's path to market, while their own competing company VitaDiag moved to fill that same space with a product that was, according to everything Olivia had described to him, significantly less effective. Less effective by how much, he said. VitaDiag's product has a 63% detection accuracy rate, she said. Ours is 91%. And in revenue terms, if your product reaches market, VitaDiag becomes obsolete within 18 months, she said flatly. Their pediatric diagnostic division, which Aldrin paid $400 million to acquire, becomes worthless. $400 million against the healthcare outcomes of 6,000 children per year, and someone had decided the math favored the money. Are you somewhere safe right now? He said. I'm at a hotel. I didn't go home tonight. Different hotel than last night. Good. Don't tell anyone which one, including people at your company. He paused. Especially people at your company. My attorney is recommending I go to the FBI, she said. She's right, he said. That needs to happen, but not tomorrow. She needs to prepare the documentation package first. What you walk in with matters. You don't get a second chance at a first disclosure. She said the same thing. A pause. Daniel. Her voice changed, lost some of the controlled precision, went somewhere quieter. They tried to kill me. Yes, he said. No softening. She didn't need softening. And if they're watching me, if they know I survived and I'm still looking, they know, he said. Assume they know everything you've done since the accident. A silence. Then they know I talked to you. Probably, he said. That means... She stopped. It means stay where you are and lock your door, he said. And it means I need you to trust me for the next 72 hours while I gather some information. What kind of information? The kind that tells us exactly who we're dealing with, he said. Names, not just companies. People make decisions, and people, unlike shell companies, make mistakes. She was quiet for a moment. You've done this before, she said. Not a question. He didn't answer. Daniel. Her voice was careful, the way you are careful with something you're not sure is fragile, but don't want to break. Who are you really? And there it was. The question he had successfully avoided for 6 years. The one he had built an entire life around not having to answer. He sat in the dark by the window for a long moment. I'll tell you, he said, when I see you in person, not on the phone. A pause. Okay, she said, quietly. Okay. Get some sleep, he said. Lock the door. Call me if anything feels wrong. How will I know if something feels wrong? You'll know, he said. You've known every time so far. Trust that. She was quiet. Then, good night, Daniel. Good night. He put the phone down and looked at the dark ceiling. 36 hours, he'd told Marcus. 24 had already passed. He closed his eyes for 4 hours. When he woke, it was still dark, and he made coffee and sat at the kitchen table and wrote down everything he knew, not on a phone, not on a computer, on paper, the way he'd been trained, because paper couldn't be remotely accessed and didn't leave metadata trails. He had the names of 3 board members. He had the shell company Aldrin Capital VitaDiag. He had Richard Hale. He had a pattern of payments, a timeline, a compromised steering column, a rerouted GPS. What he didn't have yet was the human chain of command. Who inside Aldrin had authorized this? Who had made the call that ended with a woman driving off a bridge on a rainy November night? That was what Marcus was going to give him. Marcus called at 6:48 a.m. Friday. "Hale," Marcus said without preamble. Real name Richard Hale, born 1971, former corporate attorney before moving into executive operations. No criminal record. Very clean on the surface. A pause. Underneath 3 prior companies where he was COO saw significant intellectual property suppression events. 2 settled out of court. 1 was quietly buried when the primary complainant withdrew their complaint under circumstances that were never explained. Pattern, Daniel said. He does this for a living, Marcus said. He goes into companies, identifies technologies or assets that competing interests want suppressed, and manages the suppression. He's very good at it. He's never been charged with anything. And Aldrin. Aldrin Capital, Marcus said. Managing partner is a man named Jeffrey Strand. Former pharmaceutical executive moved to private equity 12 years ago. Known in certain circles for aggressive competitive strategy. A pause that had weight to it. Daniel. Strand has connections. Not political connections, the other kind. Daniel understood what that meant. Federal. Former federal. 3 people on Aldrin's advisory board are ex-FBI and ex-DOJ, which means if Olivia Bennett walks into an FBI field office with what she has, there's a non-zero chance the disclosure hits someone in Strand's network before it hits anyone who can act on it. Daniel was very still. How confident are you in that? Confident enough to tell you, Marcus said. Not confident enough to put it in writing. Then she needs to go above field office level. She needs to go to someone who owes Strand nothing and has no reason to protect him, Marcus said. That's a narrower list than it should be. Can you put me in contact with someone at that level? A pause. A longer pause than Marcus usually took. That depends on what you're asking me to do. I'm asking for an introduction, Daniel said. Clean, documented. Someone who can receive the disclosure at the right level and move on it before Strand's network has a chance to react. Marcus thought for a moment. There's a woman at the DOJ Inspector General's office, Sarah Kern. She's been building a case against Aldrin for 2 years. Different matter entirely, but she knows the players. If Bennett's evidence is what you're telling me, it is. Kern would want it, and she'd move fast. Can you reach her? I can make a call, Marcus said. But Carter, if I do this, it means some people are going to start asking why I'm involved. And when they trace why I'm involved, they're going to trace it back to you. I know. And they're going to find out who you used to be. I know, Daniel said again. The silence between them had the weight of everything they'd never needed to say to each other. The girl, Marcus said. She's safe, Daniel said. She's with a neighbor. She's not connected to any of this. Keep it that way. That's the whole point, Daniel said. He hung up and stood in his kitchen in the early morning dark coffee, cooling in his hand, and let himself feel the full weight of what he was about to do. Not the fear of it, he'd made peace with risk a long time ago, but the weight of the specific thing he was about to give up. The invisibility. The quiet. The 6 years of being nobody in particular in Harlan County, Kentucky, which was the most valuable thing he had built for himself and for Lily since the day he walked away from the Navy and the life that had nearly swallowed him whole. He thought about Rachel. He did that sometimes in moments that were large enough to require it. His wife, gone 4 years now, who had loved him with the specific clear-eyed courage of a woman who understood exactly who she had married and loved him anyway. Who had made him promise in the last weeks that he would not disappear into grief. That he would stay. That Lily would have him. You can be careful, Rachel had said without being afraid. Those aren't the same thing. He looked at Lily's bedroom door down the hall. Still closed. Still quiet. She wouldn't be up for another hour. He thought about 6,000 children a year. 30% of late detections. Irreversible damage. He thought about a woman driving off a bridge because she refused to let it go. He picked up his phone and called Olivia. She answered on the first ring, which told him she hadn't slept much either. What do you have? I need to see you this morning, he said. In person. There are things I need to tell you, and there are things we need to do today, not tomorrow today. How quickly can you get to Harlan? An hour and a half, she said immediately. There's a parking lot behind the hardware store on Mill Street. Come there directly. Don't stop anywhere else. All right. A pause. Daniel, you said you'd tell me. I will, he said. When I see you. He drove Lily to Mrs. Greer's house at 7:30. Lily was suspicious. She could read him the way Olivia could with that same unsettling accuracy. But she accepted the explanation that he had a complicated work situation without pressing too hard because she was 8 and she trusted him. And that trust this morning more than ever felt like the most sacred obligation he had ever been given. How was in the parking lot behind the hardware store at 9:15? Olivia's rental pin at 9:43. She got out looking like a person who had been running on caffeine and controlled anger for 4 days, which was accurate. She was also, he noticed, wearing flat shoes instead of the heeled ones she'd worn at the diner, and she'd put her hair down instead of pulled back, and she was carrying a bag that looked like a travel bag, not a briefcase. She'd made decisions, changed her presentation deliberately. She was thinking about being harder to identify. He respected that without saying so. Talk, she said as she reached him. So he did. He started simply, the way he always tried to start, with the facts in order. He told her his full name, which she already knew, and then he told her what the rest of it meant. That he had served for 9 years in the United States Navy. That for 6 of those years, he had been a SEAL operating primarily in counterterrorism and hostage rescue contexts that he would not and could not detail specifically. That he had been decorated in ways that were classified and discharged honorably in ways that were not. That he had come to Harlan County 6 years ago, deliberately having chosen it from a map with the specific intention of finding a place where nobody would look for him or know his history, and had built Carter's Auto from the ground up with money he'd saved and skills he'd always had. He told her about Rachel. Not everything. Not the illness and the long year, and the way loss had a specific gravity that you either learned to carry or it buried you, but enough. That Lily had been 4 when her mother died. That everything he had done since was for Lily in one way or another. He told her this because she had asked, and because she deserved the truth, and because trust in his experience was a thing you either built honestly or not at all. Olivia was very quiet through all of it. She didn't interrupt. She didn't ask questions. She just listened with those sharp, dark eyes on his face, the way she listened to everything fully, without the ambient distraction that most people brought to hard conversations. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "The night of my accident," she said. "The way you handled it. The way you got me out of that car." A pause. "I knew. I didn't know what exactly, but I knew it wasn't ordinary." "I know you knew," he said. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because it's not something I tell people," he said simply. "It changes the way they see you. I'm not interested in being seen that way." She looked at him. "What way?" "Like a weapon," he said. "Like something that exists to be useful in a crisis." Something shifted in her expression. Something quiet and complicated. "Is that what you were afraid I'd do?" "It's what people do," he said. Not bitterly, just factually. She was quiet for a moment. "I don't see you that way," she said. He looked at her steadily. "I know," he said. "That's the only reason I'm telling you now." She absorbed that, nodded once. "All right. What else do you have?" He told her about Marcus, about Richard Hale's pattern, about Jeffrey Strand and Aldrin Capital and the ex-federal contacts on his advisory board. He told her about Sarah Kern at the DOJ Inspector General's office. He explained why a standard FBI field office disclosure carried risk. He laid out what he thought needed to happen in the next 48 hours. He watched her absorb all of it, the information, the danger, the narrowness of the window, and he watched her do the thing that had been impressing him since the diner. She didn't panic. She didn't deflect into denial. She processed, recalibrated, and moved. "My attorney," she said. "If I loop her into the Kern contact, does that work?" "Yes," he said. "She needs to be the one who formally makes the disclosure. You're the source. She's the legal representative. That's cleaner, and it protects you. How do we reach Kern? Marcus makes the introduction today, Daniel said. If she moves the way he thinks she will, you could have a meeting with her office by tomorrow. Olivia pressed her lips together. And Hale, and Strand. They're not going to wait. No, he said. They're not. Then we're working against their timeline. We're working against their timeline, he confirmed. She exhaled through her nose. What about you? When this comes out, and it will come out, people are going to know you were involved. Your name will be in the disclosure documents. I know. Your past will. I know, he said again. She looked at him. Daniel, your daughter. She's safe, he said. She's going to stay safe. He held Olivia's gaze. Lily has nothing to do with any of this. She is completely insulated from it. Anyone who needs to understand that will understand it. The certainty in his voice wasn't a performance. It was something that came from a place so deep and so decided that it simply did not have room for doubt. Olivia was quiet for a moment. You're risking the life you built, she said. Yes, he said. For this. For this, he said. And for the children that technology is supposed to reach. She looked at him for a long time. The November wind moved between them. Neither of them spoke. Then something happened that he hadn't anticipated. Something that cracked the CEO's composure just slightly, just at the edges. The composed precision, the controlled cadence, all of it going soft for exactly 4 seconds before she pulled it back. I'm sorry, she said. That this came to your door. You drove off a bridge, he said. I think you've got the harder position. Something in her face almost smiled. Almost. You're a strange man, Daniel Carter. So I've been told. His phone buzzed. He looked at it. Marcus Kern is interested. Expecting contact from Bennett's counsel by 5 p.m. today. Don't be late. He showed Olivia the screen. She read it. Something moved across her face, relief and dread and determination in the same breath. I need to call my attorney, she said. Yes, he said. Now. She was already dialing. He stepped back, gave her space, and looked out at the street. The Saturday morning traffic of a small Kentucky town. Unhurried, ordinary, completely indifferent to the fact that in a parking lot behind the hardware store, the architecture of a conspiracy that had tried to kill a woman and suppress a technology that could save thousands of children's lives was beginning quietly and with great care to be dismantled. He heard Olivia say, Christine, I need you to listen to me carefully. We have a contact at the DOJ Inspector General's office, and we have a window of about 4 hours. He didn't hear the rest. He was watching the street. Because 3 spaces down in a direction that provided clean sight lines to both lot entrances, a black SUV with a small dent on the rear panel had been sitting with its engine off for 11 minutes. He had seen it when he arrived. He had been watching it since. Now the driver's window came down 2 inches. Daniel did not move quickly. He moved the way he had been trained to move in situations that required the opposite of speed, calmly, deliberately, in a direction that placed him between the SUV and Olivia without making it obvious that's what he was doing. He turned, caught Olivia's eye, and gave her one look. She was smart enough and had known him long enough, 4 days, which in circumstances like these was enough to read it immediately. She turned away from the SUV, kept talking to her attorney, moved toward the hardware store entrance without breaking stride. Daniel took out his phone and dialed 911. I'd like to report a suspicious vehicle, he said when the dispatcher picked up. He gave the plate number, he'd memorized it in the first 30 seconds, and the location. Professional. Calm. Exactly the way he'd reported Olivia's accident 3 nights ago. The SUV's engine started. It pulled out of the lot slowly. Too slowly. The controlled slowness of someone who didn't want to be seen running. Daniel watched it go. He waited until it was out of sight. Then he went into the hardware store and found Olivia standing by the key-cutting counter, still on her phone, tracking him with her eyes. They're gone, he said quietly. She nodded. Didn't break stride on her call. Christine, yes, I'm sending you the Kern contact in the next 5 minutes. Clear your afternoon. He bought a box of nails he didn't need because you didn't stand in a hardware store for 10 minutes without buying something if you didn't want to be remembered, and because certain habits were permanent. Outside, the street was quiet. The SUV was gone, but they both understood what its presence meant. Hale knew. Strand knew. They had been found, which meant the window Marcus had described, the narrow one, the one that required moving today, and not tomorrow, had just gotten narrower. He looked at Olivia when she hung up. "Christine is calling Kern's office now," she said. "We have a teleconference at 4 o'clock. "Good," he said. "That car," she said. "Yes." "How did they find us?" "Your rental is registered to your name," he said. "If they have someone watching the rental agencies." "Which they do," she said, not a question. "Which they do." She processed this without flinching. "So they know I'm here, in Harlan, with you?" "Yes. And they know you're involved?" "Yes." She was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "Then it's not just me they're trying to stop anymore." He looked at her steadily. "No," he said. "It's not." Something in her expression shifted then. Not fear, nothing so simple, but the specific gravity of a person who has just understood that a choice they made has expanded its consequences beyond themselves. The weight of knowing that someone else is now in the path of something because of you. "Daniel," she started. "Don't," he said. Not unkindly. "Don't apologize. Don't tell me you didn't mean for this to happen. It happened. We move forward." She closed her mouth, nodded once. 4 o'clock, he said. "Until then you stay out of your car. We take mine. Different route every time. And we don't make any calls on your company-registered phone." "Agreed," she said. They walked to his truck. She got in the passenger side without being asked. He started the engine. And somewhere in a glass-walled office in Chicago, Richard Hale received a text from the driver of a black SUV that said 3 words. "She's not alone." Hale read it, set his phone face down on his desk, looked out at the city, thought for a moment about the kind of man who pulls a drowning woman from a river in a rainstorm and then disappears before anyone can take his photograph. He picked up his phone and made a different call. One that went further up the chain than his usual calls. One he didn't make unless the situation had moved outside the parameters of ordinary management. "We have a problem," he said when the line connected. The voice on the other end was calm, familiar with problems. "Explain." "The Bennett woman has help," Hale said. "The kind of help that knows what it's doing." A pause. "Then handle it accordingly," the voice said. Hale looked out the window. "You understand what I'm saying. This isn't a liability situation anymore. This is a—" "I understand exactly what it is," the voice said. "Handle it." The call ended. Hale set his phone down again. He looked at his computer screen. He opened a file. He made 3 more calls. In Harlan, Kentucky. Daniel Carter drove Olivia Bennett down a back road he had known for 6 years, the long way around the route. No GPS would suggest toward a diner that made terrible coffee, and understood that some conversations needed no interruption. And in the truck, Olivia said quietly, "Whatever happens at 4 o'clock, whatever Kern says, whatever the next step is, I need you to know something." He kept his eyes on the road. "What's that?" "What you told me this morning," she said. "About who you were. About why you left it." A pause. "You didn't have to tell me that." "No," he said. "But you did." "Yes." She looked out the window for a moment. "I've spent 12 years learning not to trust people," she said. "In my industry, in my boardroom, in almost every room I walk into." A pause. "I don't know how to explain why I trust you except that I do, and that it's the first time in a very long time that trusting someone hasn't felt like a risk I was calculating." He drove. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "That's what trust is supposed to feel like," he said, "when it's real." She turned and looked at him. He kept his eyes on the road. The trees went past on both sides, bare and gray and November quiet. The sky was low and white. The road was empty. And ahead of them was 4 o'clock. And Sarah Kern. and the narrow window that was either going to open or close, and on which side of it they ended up depended on the next few hours and the choices they made and the courage it took to make them. Daniel Carter had not asked for this, but he had chosen it, and there was a difference. The 4 o'clock call started 3 minutes late. Daniel sat in the passenger seat of his own truck. He'd given Olivia the driver's side because it was her call. Her company, her life parked in the lot behind the public library on Elm Street, which had good cellular coverage and 2 exits and no cameras, because he had known this town for 6 years and knew exactly which lots had cameras and which didn't. Olivia had her phone on speaker low volume. Her attorney Christine was already on the line when Sarah Kern's assistant connected them. Kern herself came on without preamble. "Ms. Bennett, I've been briefed by Mr. Webb's contact. Before we go any further, I want to be direct with you. My office has had Aldrin Capital on our radar for 14 months. A different matter, different industry, but the same structural fingerprints. If what your attorney has sent me in the last 2 hours is what I think it is, this conversation could be significant. So let's not waste time." A pause. "Walk me through what you have." Olivia walked her through it. Every piece in order, with the precision that Daniel had been watching her apply to everything since the diner. The financial records, the shell company, the board member payments, the timeline against the FDA submission, the fleet management system and the GPS reroute, the mechanic's assessment of the steering column, the SUV in the parking lot this morning. Kern listened without interrupting. When Olivia finished, there were 4 seconds of silence. "The mechanic's written assessment," Kern said. "Is it notarized?" "No," Olivia said. She glanced at Daniel. "Get it notarized today," Kern said. "Before end of business. Everything else your attorney sent is usable as is. The financial records are clean, the trace documentation is solid. But I want that assessment notarized before I take this upstairs." "Understood," Christine said from her end of the line. "Ms. Bennett." Kern's voice shifted slightly, still professional, but with something underneath it that sounded almost like controlled urgency. "I need to ask you directly, do you believe you are in immediate physical danger?" Olivia looked at Daniel. "Yes," Daniel said quietly. "Yes," Olivia said into the phone. "Then I'm going to recommend that you do not return to Chicago until we have had a chance to move on this material," Kern said. "My office can have a protective contact in your area within a brief pause papers, moving 6 hours. "She doesn't need a protective contact," Daniel said, just loud enough for the phone to pick up. Kern paused. "Who is that?" "His name is Daniel Carter," Olivia said. "He's with me." A beat. "Is Mr. Carter law enforcement?" "Former military," Olivia said. Another beat shorter. "All right," Kern said in the tone of a person who had just mentally reclassified a variable. "Then I'll trust your judgment on immediate security. But I want daily contact. Ms. Bennett, you or your attorney checks in with my office every 12 hours. Understood?" "Understood," Olivia said. "The notarized assessment by end of business today," Kern said again. "And I want everything on a secure server, not email. Christine, I'll have my assistant send you the transfer protocol in the next 15 minutes. "Received," Christine said. "Ms. Bennett." Kern paused. "What you've brought us, if this holds up, and based on what I'm looking at, I believe it will. This is not a small matter. These are people who have operated with impunity for a very long time. That means they are going to push back hard when they feel pressure. Are you prepared for that?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "I've been prepared for it since they drove me off a highway," she said. A beat of silence. Then something that might have been respect moved through Kern's voice. "Okay," she said. "We'll be in touch." The call ended at 4:21 p.m. Olivia sat with the phone in her hand for a moment. Then she exhaled a long, controlled breath that she had clearly been holding for several minutes and said, "We need a notary." "Bank on 5th Street," Daniel said. "Closes at 5. "Then we need to move." He was already reaching for his door. They got the mechanic's assessment notarized at 4:47. The notary, a heavy-set man named Gerald, who had been doing this for 22 years, and had the practiced incuriosity of someone who understood that his job was to verify signatures, not ask questions, stamp the document without comment, and wish them a good evening. At 5:03, Christine confirmed that the secure transfer to Kern's office was complete. At 5:15, Daniel dropped Olivia at a different hotel than the previous 2 nights, a mid-range chain on the interstate, booked under Christine's name, and watched her go through the lobby doors before he drove away. He picked up Lily from Mrs. Greer's at 5:45. She was in the middle of a board game with Mrs. Greer, and deeply reluctant to leave, which Daniel took as an excellent sign about both her health and her quality of life. In the truck on the way home, she said, "Daddy, is everything okay?" He glanced at her. 8 years old, sharp eyes her mother's radar. "Everything's fine," he said. "Why?" "You look tired," she said. Then after a pause, "Also, you smell like a diner." He almost laughed. "I had coffee." "You had a lot of coffee," she said with the diagnostic confidence of a child who had strong opinions about most things. "You're probably right," he said. She seemed to accept this. She looked out the window for a moment. Then, "Mrs. Greer said you were helping someone." He had not said this to Mrs. Greer, which meant Mrs. Greer had intuited it from the 6 years she had known him. "A little bit," he said. "Is it a person or a machine?" Lily asked. He frowned. "What? Like, are you fixing something or are you helping a person?" "A person," he said. "Good," she said seriously. "People are harder to fix, but it matters more." He looked at the road. "Yeah," he said. "It does." He made dinner. He helped with homework. He read to her at 8 o'clock. She was in the middle of a chapter book about a girl who discovered she could communicate with horses, which she found fascinating, and Daniel found surprisingly well written, and by 8:45, she was asleep. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and his notepad and wrote down the status of everything he knew. It was a habit he couldn't break, putting the shape of a situation on paper at the end of each day so that his sleeping mind could work on it and his waking mind could start from a complete picture. What he knew. Kern had the documents. The window was open. Aldrin and Hale knew Olivia was still active and that she had help. The SUV in the lot this morning meant physical surveillance, which meant someone had made a resource decision that managing this situation required eyes on the ground, not just digital monitoring. That was an escalation. Escalations followed a logic. The next step in that logic was not more surveillance. He looked at his notepad for a long time. Then he picked up the burner phone and called Marcus. "Talk to me," Marcus said. "The SUV this morning," Daniel said. "I've been thinking about the resource decision. They put physical assets in Harlan County. That's not a threat assessment, that's a response to one." "Agreed," Marcus said. "Which means they've already made the decision to move past the management phase," Daniel said. "They're not trying to contain Olivia anymore. They're trying to end this." "Also agreed," Marcus said. "So the 48-hour window I thought we had is probably shorter," Marcus said. "Yeah, I've been thinking the same thing." A pause. "Carter, I made some inquiries after we talked this morning. About Strand. About the people he uses when things escalate." A pause that had weight to it. "He has a guy. Not affiliated with Aldrin directly. Contractor. The kind of contractor that doesn't show up in corporate records." Daniel was very still. "You have a name. I have a description and a methodology," Marcus said. "That's enough. This is someone who makes things look like accidents, which, given how the Bennett car situation was handled, is consistent." Same person. Possibly the same person who had compromised Olivia's steering column and triggered her GPS reroute, still in play, still being paid. "She needs to not be in a predictable location," Daniel said. "She needs to not be in Kentucky at all," Marcus said. "Get her to Christine's office in Chicago, or somewhere with more people around her. Isolated hotel on an interstate is not ideal." "I know. I'll call her." "Tonight," Marcus said. "Not tomorrow." "Tonight," Daniel confirmed. He called Olivia at 9:22 p.m. She answered in 2 rings. "What's wrong?" "Nothing yet," he said. "But I need you to listen to me." He told her what Marcus had told him. Not all of it, not the word contractor, not the full implication, but enough. Enough for someone as smart as Olivia to understand what he was telling her without him having to say it in a way that would sit in her chest all night and prevent sleep. "You're saying I need to move," she said. "I'm saying the hotel you're in tonight is the third hotel in 4 days. Strand has resources. If they're running your rental records, your credit cards. Christine's credit cards." "Christine booked it," she said. "I know. Does Strand's network have any reason to be looking at Christine?" A pause. "She's my attorney of record. Yes, they'd know about her." "Then yes," he said. "You need to move." A longer pause. "Where? Is there somewhere you can go that has no professional connection to you? No business relationship, no billing address, nothing in your corporate records?" A pause. He could hear her thinking through her contacts, her connections, the people in her life, and how they mapped to her professional world. "My college roommate," she said finally. "She lives in Louisville. We've stayed close. She has nothing to do with medtech, and her name is nowhere near my company." "Call her," he said. "Tonight. Don't explain everything. Just tell her you need a place to stay, and you'll explain in person." "She'll say yes," Olivia said with the certainty of someone who knows their people. "She always says yes." "Good. Drive there tonight. Don't use the rental, leave it at the hotel. Call a rideshare from the hotel lobby." "Rideshare under my name?" "Under your friend's name," he said. "Call her first, have her request the ride." A pause. "You've thought about this," she said. "I think about these things," he said simply. "Daniel." Her voice changed, dropped into something quieter, more direct. "Are you in danger?" He considered the question honestly. "I'm careful," he said. "That's not what I asked." "I know," he said. A silence between them. The kind that has more in it than either person is saying out loud, and both of them know it. "Lily," she said. "Is safe," he said. "I promise you, she is safe. You have to be safe too," she said. "You understand that?" He didn't answer immediately. "Daniel," she said, firm, not a request. "I'll be careful," he said. "That is still not what I asked." He almost smiled in the dark of his kitchen. "I'll be safe," he said. "Go call your friend." She was quiet for one more moment. "Okay," she said. "I'll text you when I'm there." "Good. And Daniel." A pause. "Thank you. For the 10th time. I know you're tired of hearing it." "Good night, Olivia," he said. He sat with the phone for a moment after she hung up. Then he went to check the locks. Front-back garage. Same as every night for 6 years. He went to look in on Lily. She was deeply asleep, one arm flung over the edge of the mattress, the horse book on the floor where it had fallen at some point. He picked it up, put it on the nightstand, and stood in the doorway for a count of 10. He thought about what Marcus had said. He thought about a man who made things look like accidents. He thought about the fact that his address was public record, a business owner in a small town. Daniel Carter Carter's Auto 114 Mechanic Street, and that anyone with the motivation and the resources to find it had probably already found it. I didn't sleep at the window tonight. He moved the chair to face the front door and sat there with the Glock on the table beside him and his phone in his hand, and he watched the dark and listened to the house. At 12:47 a.m., Olivia texted from a Louisville number he didn't recognize. "I'm here. She made me tea and didn't ask a single question. Some people are just good." He texted back, "Yes. Get some sleep." She texted back, "You too." And then after a pause, "I mean it." He put the phone down. He watched the front door. He didn't sleep. At 6:15 a.m., Saturday, Marcus called. "It moved faster than we thought," Marcus said, and the way he said it told Daniel everything before the next sentence came. "Kern's office executed a coordinated action at 6 a.m. this morning. 3 board members, Peterson, Graves, and Whitfield, Hale, and 2 individuals at Aldrin Capital, including Jeffrey Strand's chief of operations." Daniel was quiet. "Strand himself hasn't been touched yet," Marcus said. "Kern's building the chain, but the people immediately below him who were running the board member payments and the technical side of the accident situation, they're in federal custody as of this morning." Hale is cooperating," Marcus said. which is consistent with every other time he's been in this position. He's done this for other people 3 times. He always cooperates when it gets to this point. The contractor, Daniel said. Kern's team picked him up in Louisville at 5:45 a.m., Marcus said. Daniel went very still. Louisville. Apparently he had moved his operation, Marcus said carefully. The team located him at a motel approximately 4 miles from the address where Ms. Bennett spent last night. The silence in Daniel's kitchen was absolute. She didn't know, Marcus said. He didn't know she was there. There's no indication the connection had been made. Kern's people were tracking him independently, based on a lead from the financial records. It was coincidence. There's no such thing, Daniel said quietly. No, Marcus said. There isn't. But the point is, he was picked up, and she's safe, and it's done. Daniel let out a breath that had been compressed somewhere in his chest since at least 3 o'clock in the morning. The technology, he said. That's going to take longer, Marcus said. That's lawyers and regulators and the FDA, and none of that moves fast. But the obstruction is removed. The people who were paid to freeze the submission process are in federal custody. Kern's office will flag the FDA as part of the investigation. It'll move. How long? Realistically, 6 to 18 months to get back on track. But it'll move. 6,000 children a year. 30% of late detections. 6 to 18 months. He did that math too. And it was hard. And it was also true that 6 to 18 months was better than never, which was where this had been heading 72 hours ago. Does Olivia know? He said. Kern's office is calling her attorney at 7, Marcus said. I wanted you to have it first. He didn't ask why. He knew why. Marcus had sent it to him first because Marcus understood the specific calculus of a man who has put his life structure at risk for something and deserves to know the outcome before it becomes news. Thank you, Daniel said, for all of it. Don't thank me, Marcus said. Just Carter. Go be with your kid. Take a week off. I have a transmission due Monday, Daniel said. Marcus laughed, a real one, tired and genuine. Of course you do, he said. Of course you do. He hung up. Daniel sat for a moment in the quiet of his kitchen. The early morning light was coming through the window. Gray and soft November light, the kind that promised nothing dramatic and delivered exactly what it offered. He heard Lily's door open down the hall, the sound of her feet on the floor, the bathroom door, then her feet again heading his way. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas, the ones with the small horses on them, which seemed appropriate today, looking sleep-soft and slightly confused about what day it was. Saturday, she said hopefully. Saturday, he confirmed. She climbed into the chair across from him at the kitchen table. She looked at him with her mother's eyes, careful and clear. You didn't sleep, she said. I slept a little, he said. How much is a little? Enough. She looked at him. Is the person okay? The one you were helping. He looked at his daughter. 8 years old, asking him the right question without knowing why it was the right question. Yes, he said. She's okay. Lily nodded, satisfied. Good, she said. Can we have pancakes? Yeah, he said. We can have pancakes. He stood up and went to the cabinet. He got the flour and the baking powder and the eggs and the butter and the buttermilk that he bought specifically for Saturday pancakes, because Lily had decided at age 6 that buttermilk pancakes were objectively superior, and he had agreed. He cracked eggs into a bowl. His phone buzzed on the table. Olivia Christine called. Kern's office called. I need a minute. A pause, then another message. They got them. They actually got them. He looked at the message. He looked at his daughter, who was pulling the syrup down from the cabinet with the focused satisfaction of someone who knows exactly what they want. He typed back, I know. Told you it would hold. 3 dots. Then, how are you so calm? He thought about that. Then he typed, I have a kid asking for pancakes. Hard to be anything else. A longer pause. 3 dots, stopping, starting again. Then, thank you, Daniel. For all of it. For everything you gave up to do this. He put the phone face down on the counter. He mixed the batter. He heated the griddle. He listened to Lily arrange the table with the specific territorial authority of a child who takes Saturday breakfast very seriously. The syrup in the exact center, the butter dish next to it, 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 glasses of orange juice that she poured herself with great concentration and minor spillage. "Daddy," she said from the table. When you help people like the person you were helping, does it feel different than fixing cars?" He poured the first circle of batter onto the griddle, watched it spread. "Yes," he said. "How?" He thought about how to answer this honestly at an 8-year-old level that was also the true level, because truth and simplicity were usually the same thing. "Fixing a car," he said, "you know exactly what's broken. You find the part, you fix it, you test it, done." He flipped the first pancake. "Helping a person, you don't always know what's broken. And sometimes you can't fix it yourself. Sometimes the best you can do is stand next to them while they figure it out." Lily thought about this seriously. "Is that harder?" "Sometimes," he said. "But better." He looked at the griddle. "Yeah," he said. "Usually better." She seemed to find this satisfying. She rearranged the syrup 1 millimeter to the left. "I think you should do both," she said. "The cars and the people." "I think you might be right," he said. The pancakes came off the griddle golden, and even the way they always did when he had time, the way they sometimes didn't on weekdays when time was shorter and attention was split. He set the plates on the table. He sat across from Lily. She immediately attacked the butter with the enthusiasm of someone who had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. His phone buzzed again. He didn't look at it. Lily looked at him. "You can check it, she said. "I know. It might be important." "Pancakes are important," he said. She giggled, a sound so clean and unguarded that it cut straight through the accumulated weight of the last 4 days and left something lighter in its place. He picked up the syrup, poured it the way Lily liked, covering the whole surface, no dry spots. She watched with approval. The phone buzzed again. He left it, at 9:15. When the plates were cleared, and Lily was in her room working on the horsebook, and Daniel was washing the dishes, he picked up the phone. 4 messages. 2 from Marcus, follow-up details about the arrests. Nothing requiring immediate action. 1 from Christine, Olivia's attorney, with a formal summary of the morning's events that read like a legal document, which it probably was. And 1 from Olivia, sent at 8:47 a.m. Just 3 sentences. "I went to see my brother this morning. He lives 20 minutes from here. I haven't told him what's been happening, but I sat with him for an hour, and I thought about what you said about the children and the 30% and what it means. I understand now why you couldn't walk away." He read it twice. He typed back, "How is he?" The reply came in under a minute. "He's good. He's really good. He coaches Little League now." A pause. "He would have liked to meet you." He read that and stood over the sink for a moment. Then he typed, "Maybe he will." He put the phone in his pocket. He dried his hands. He went to Lily's room and knocked on the door. She had recently decided that doors were to be knocked on, a position he respected entirely, and when she said, "Come in," he leaned in the doorway. "You want to go to the park?" he said. She looked up from her book. The calculation in her face was quick and decisive. "Yes," she said. "Can we get hot chocolate after? If it's cold enough." "It's November," she said. "Fair enough," he said. "Get your coat." She was off the bed and reaching for her closet before the sentence was finished. He watched her move with the specific wonder that had not diminished in 8 years, the ordinary miracle of this particular person being alive in the world. I went to get his own jacket. He checked his phone one more time. Marcus had sent a final update at 9:08 a.m. Strand's turn coming. Kern says within the week. Also Carter. Nobody's going to make noise about your involvement. Your name stays background. You're clear. He read this. Put the phone in his pocket. He stood in his kitchen for one moment. Just one. He let himself feel the specific quality of it, the weight lifting, not all at once, not dramatically, but in the way that real weight actually moves. Gradually, unevenly, leaving behind a tiredness that wasn't defeat, but the honest exhaustion of having done something that mattered. His name would stay background. He would go back to being nobody in particular in Harlan County. The garage would open Monday. The Henderson truck's transmission would be finished by afternoon. The invisible life would remain intact. And somewhere in an office in Washington, a woman named Sarah Kern was building a case that would reach all the way to Jeffrey Strand, and the technology that could detect childhood autoimmune conditions 3 years earlier than current diagnostics would find its way back into the FDA process, and 6,000 children a year would eventually have the chance they'd been denied. Not because of Daniel Carter. Not in any way that would ever appear in a headline or a press release or a case summary. But because of what he'd chosen on a rainy November night when a car went off the road and he didn't think he just moved. Daddy. Lily was in the hallway, coat on hat slightly crooked. She was holding her gloves and looking at him with her mother's particular version of patience, the kind that wasn't waiting exactly, but had already arrived and was simply making room for him to catch up. Ready. Ready, he said. He put on his jacket. He held the door for her, and they walked out into the cold, clean November morning together. The mechanic and his daughter. Nobody in particular, in a small Kentucky town, and the door closed behind them. His phone buzzed one more time in his pocket. He didn't check it until they were halfway to the park, and Lily was running ahead, her breath making small clouds in the air. Olivia. 9:47 a.m. Christine says the FDA notification goes out this week. She thinks we're looking at 12 months, maybe less. She said she's never seen Kern move this fast on anything. He read it, started to put the phone away. Then her next message arrived. Also, I want to say something and I need you to just let me say it without arguing. He waited. The night you pulled me out of that river. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know what was happening with my company, or what it meant or any of it. You just saw someone who needed help and you went in. A pause. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. Everything that happened after the evidence, Kern, the arrests, none of it happens without that one moment. Without you making that one choice when nobody was watching and there was nothing in it for you. He stood in the park with his phone in his hand and November around him and Lily running in a wide arc through the grass ahead, her coat bright against the gray of everything else, and he read the message twice. You saved more than my life that night, she wrote. I don't know if you understand that. He understood. He typed back, I understand. Then after a pause, go be with your brother. And then, because it was Saturday and the park was empty and Lily was calling his name from across the grass, he put the phone in his pocket and ran to catch his daughter. 3 weeks passed the way good weeks do after bad ones, quietly without ceremony, with the particular relief of ordinary things resuming their ordinary weight. Daniel opened the garage at 7 every morning. He finished the Henderson transmission on Monday as promised. He replaced a timing belt on Tuesday, sorted out an electrical problem on a 2019 Ford F-150 on Wednesday that had been misdiagnosed twice before it came to him, and spent Thursday afternoon finally fixing Lily's bicycle chain, which had been waiting patiently in the corner of the garage for 2 weeks. Lily declared the bicycle chain repair long overdue. He agreed. He did not check the news obsessively. He checked it the way he always had, once in the morning, front to back, actual paper. And when the story began appearing, he read those articles the same way he read the rest, carefully, without reaction. The first piece ran in the Wall Street Journal on a Tuesday, 17 days after the arrests. It was careful and factual, and attributed almost everything to anonymous sources within the DOJ Inspector General's office. It named Jeffrey Strand and Aldrin Capital. It named 3 Bennett MedTech board members. It named Richard Hale, who had already entered a cooperation agreement. It described a scheme to suppress a pediatric diagnostic technology through board-level corruption and financial obstruction, motivated by competitive interests, valued at over $400 million. It did not mention Daniel Carter. It mentioned Olivia Bennett in 3 paragraphs. The third paragraph described her as the whistleblower who had brought the evidence to federal authorities, despite, as the article put it, significant personal risk. Daniel read those 3 paragraphs twice. Then he folded the paper and put it down and drank his coffee. Ray came in at 7:30, saw the paper on the desk, looked at Daniel and said, "That's the company, isn't it? The woman who came in." "Yes," Daniel said. Ray nodded slowly. He picked up the paper, read for a moment, set it back down. "She okay?" "She's okay," Daniel said. Ray seemed to want to ask more and decided not to. He went to the bay and started his day. One of Ray's better qualities, and lately he'd been demonstrating a lot of them. The story grew over the following week. Other outlets picked it up. The financial press dug into Aldrin Capital's portfolio structure. A congressional subcommittee announced it would look into FDA submission irregularities in the pediatric diagnostic space. Vitadiag stock dropped 14% in 2 days. Two of Strand's ex-Federal Advisory Board members resigned publicly with statements so carefully worded they said nothing while appearing to say something. Jeffrey Strand hired 3 law firms and said nothing personally. His attorneys said plenty, all of it, denying everything. But Kern's office, Marcus told Daniel in a brief call, was not concerned. The cooperation they had received from Hale and 2 of the board members had provided enough specificity to proceed. "Timeline?" Daniel asked. "Indictments by spring," Marcus said. "Criminal charges, not just civil." "And Olivia, she's back at her company," Marcus said. "She called an emergency board session, removed the 3 compromised members, appointed interim replacements. From what I'm hearing, she moved very fast and very clean. The company's holding together." The technology. FDA notification went out. Kern's office flagged the submission obstruction as part of the criminal referral. The FDA has agreed to expedite review given the circumstances. A pause. 14 months, they think. Maybe less. 14 months. He did the math on what that meant for the children. It would reach the same way he'd done it at the diner, the morning Olivia had told him about the 30%. He didn't say the number out loud. He just put the phone down and went back to work. Olivia called him on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks and 2 days after the arrests at 6:47 p.m. He was in the kitchen. Lily was at the table doing the kind of homework that required colored pencils and a level of artistic commitment that she brought to very few other activities. "I want to ask you something," Olivia said when he stepped into the hallway. "All right. Will you let me come to Harlan?" she said. "I want to—" A pause. Not the strategic pause she used in professional contexts, the one that was a form of control, a different kind. "I want to see you, in person. There are things I want to say that don't work over the phone." He was quiet for a moment. "When?" "Saturday, if that works. I'll drive myself. I know the way now." A beat. "I also know which road not to take." He almost smiled. "Saturday works," he said. "I won't take up your whole day," she said. "Just a few hours." "You can take the day," he said. And then before she could respond, "Lily's been asking about you." A silence. "She has. She knows I was helping someone," he said. "She knows the someone is okay. She's drawn certain conclusions." A pause. "She's 8, but she's got her mother's radar." Another silence. Something in it that was warm and complicated and careful all at once. "I'd like to meet her," Olivia said quietly. "Yeah," he said. "I think you would." Saturday arrived cold and bright, the kind of early December day that was honest about what it was. No pretense of warmth, just clear air and low sun, and the particular stillness that came after the year had made up its mind about winter. Olivia pulled into the garage lot at 10:12 a.m., in a personal car this time. Not a rental, a dark green Subaru that looked like it got driven in real weather, which surprised him slightly and then didn't. She got out wearing jeans and a heavy jacket and flat boots and no briefcase. And she looked less like a CEO than at any point since he'd known her, which was only a month, but felt like longer in the way that intense circumstances compressed time. She looked rested. That was the main thing. The specific exhaustion that had been living under her eyes since the diner was gone. "You look better," he said when she reached him. "You look exactly the same," she said. "I mean that as a compliment." "I know," he said. They stood for a moment in the lot. The garage was closed. He'd decided that before she arrived without fully acknowledging to himself that he'd decided it. Saturdays he sometimes opened half-days. Not today. I brought something, she said. She went to her car and came back with a paper bag, the kind from a bakery, not a grocery store. She held it out. I didn't know if you'd have plans for breakfast. He looked at the bag. What is it? Croissants, she said. From a place in Louisville that my friend's been going to for 10 years. She says they're worth any drive. Is she right? She's usually right about food, Olivia said. That's been my experience. I took the bag. Lily's going to want one. I brought 4, she said. I figured. They went inside. Lily was in the kitchen still in pajamas at 10 in the morning because it was Saturday and she had strong opinions about the pace of Saturday mornings. She looked up from the horse book she'd finished it and started it again from the beginning, which was her highest form of literary approval, and looked at Olivia with the direct, uncomplicated assessment of a child who had not yet learned to pretend that she wasn't looking. You're the person my dad helped, she said. Lily, Daniel said. That's okay, Olivia said. She crouched down slightly, not all the way, just enough to bring herself closer to Lily's eye level. Yes, I am. Lily looked at her for a moment. He was worried about you, she said. He didn't say so, but I could tell. I know, Olivia said. He did a good job of not showing it. He's good at that, Lily said. Then, do you like horses? Olivia blinked. The pivot was fast enough that it took her a half second. I do, she said. I grew up near a stable. I used to ride when I was about your age. Lily's entire demeanor shifted approximately 40 degrees toward warmth. I'm reading a book about a girl who talks to horses, she said. It's really good. Have you read it? I don't think I have, Olivia said. What's it about? Daniel put the croissants on the table and listened to his daughter explain the entire plot of a book she had read twice in 2 weeks, to a woman who ran a company worth several $100 million, and he watched Olivia listen, really listen, the same way she listened to everything with that full and complete attention, and ask questions that were genuine, not polite. And he felt something settle in the room that he didn't have a clean word for. They ate croissants at the kitchen table. Lily declared them superior to everything she had previously eaten in the croissant category, which was not an enormous category, but still represented a meaningful endorsement. Olivia agreed they were excellent. Daniel agreed they were not bad, which was his version of the same thing. After breakfast, Lily went to get dressed because Mrs. Greer had invited her for a Saturday morning craft project that she had been anticipating all week. She thundered down the hall and back at the speed that children achieve when motivation is high, reappeared in jeans, and her horse sweatshirt submitted to having her hair brushed with the stoicism of someone enduring a minor indignity for a greater purpose, and then stopped at the kitchen doorway on her way out. She looked at Olivia. It was nice to meet you, she said with the formal sincerity of a child who had been taught that this phrase meant something and intended it to. It was really nice to meet you, Lily, Olivia said. Same sincerity. No performance. Lily nodded, satisfied. She turned to Daniel. Bye, Daddy. Back by noon, he said. 11:30, she corrected, because she had learned that negotiating downward made departures more dramatic and returns more triumphant. 11:30. He agreed. She left. The door closed. The house was quiet. Daniel poured 2 more coffees and sat back down at the table. Olivia wrapped her hands around her mug. Outside, the winter light moved through the windows at its low December angle, unhurried. She's extraordinary, Olivia said. Yes, he said. No false modesty. She was. She has your... Olivia paused, choosing. She has the same thing you have. That quality of being entirely present, like there's no part of her attention anywhere else when she's talking to you. He looked at his coffee. She gets it from her mother, he said. Rachel was like that. Every conversation was the only conversation she was having. Olivia was quiet for a moment. She sounds like someone worth missing. Every day, he said simply. Another quiet moment, not uncomfortable. The kind of quiet that had developed between them over the last month. The way quiet develops between people who have been through something together earned and easy, and requiring nothing to fill it. "I want to tell you what's happened," Olivia said. "At the company, with everything." "You don't have to." "I want to," she said. "Not because you need to know, because you were part of it. You should know how it landed." He leaned back. "Okay, tell me." She told him everything. The emergency board session, she'd called it 6 days after the arrests, before most of the press coverage had appeared, moving fast enough that the remaining board members hadn't had time to organize around the chaos. She'd walked in with documentation with Christine beside her, with a restructuring proposal that was ready to vote on within the hour. The 3 compromised members were out. 2 new interim members, people she had chosen herself. People she knew and trusted from outside the company, were voted in. The whole session had taken 3 hours. "Richard Hale had already cleaned out his office," she said. "He was gone before I called the board session, which was fine. I didn't want to see him." "Did you?" Daniel said. "Want to see him?" She thought about this honestly. "No," she said. "And yes, I wanted to look at him and understand how someone decides that children's health outcomes are a reasonable cost of doing business." She paused. "But I don't think I would have gotten that from looking at him. I don't think people like that show it on their faces." "No," Daniel agreed. "They don't." "The research team," she said, and her voice changed when she said it, something coming alive in it that hadn't been there before. "The people who built the diagnostic algorithm. I met with all of them the week after the arrests. 12 people. They've been sitting on this technology for 18 months, watching it go nowhere, not understanding why, not able to get answers." She stopped for a moment. "One of them, the lead researcher, a woman named Dr. Park, she told me she had started to think there was something wrong with the technology, that maybe the delays meant they'd found a flaw that she'd missed." Olivia's jaw tightened. They made her doubt her own work. That's what 18 months of deliberate obstruction does to the person who built the thing. Daniel was quiet. "I told her the truth," Olivia said. "All of it. She deserved to know why." She looked at her coffee. She cried. Not because she was relieved, or not only because of that. She was angry. Really angry. The kind of anger that comes from knowing that the time that was lost can't be recovered. "How is she now?" "She's back in the lab," Olivia said. "Working. Harder than before, if that's possible." A pause. "She sent me a text the morning after we talked. It said, 'I'm going to finish this for the kids who waited.'" Olivia looked up. 4 words. "I've been thinking about them every day since." Daniel felt the weight of those 4 words land with the specific gravity of true things. "The FDA process," he said. "Kern's office flagged it." "Flagged and escalated," Olivia said. "We have a preliminary review meeting in February. Dr. Park says if everything goes well, we're looking at conditional approval within a year." She paused. "A year. 18 months ago, we were 6 weeks from submitting." He nodded. Let the math of what had been lost and what would be recovered sit without trying to balance it. It didn't balance cleanly. It wasn't supposed to. "And Strand," he said. Something hardened in her expression. "His attorneys are arguing that he had no direct knowledge of the tactics used, that the payments were authorized by his chief of operations without his explicit approval." She paused. "Kern's office doesn't believe that. I don't believe it. And based on what Hale said in his cooperation agreement, the evidence doesn't support it." A beat. "The indictments are coming. His lawyers can say whatever they want." "They will," Daniel said. "I know," she said. "I'm prepared for that part to be long and ugly." A pause. "But the technology isn't waiting for the criminal process. That's the thing I've had to hold on to. Whatever happens to Strand in a courtroom, Dr. Park is in her lab. The FDA meeting is in February. Those things move on their own timeline, and they're not connected to Jeffrey Strand's legal strategy." She looked at Daniel. "Does that make sense?" "It makes complete sense," he said. She was quiet for a moment. She turned her mug slowly on the table. "I've been thinking about something you said," she said. "At the diner. The first morning when I told you everything." "What did I say?" "I asked you why you were helping me," she said. And you said because someone counted on the right thing being too difficult for anyone to bother. He remembered. I've been thinking about that, she said. About how often that calculation is correct. How often the people doing the wrong thing are right, that nobody will push back hard enough to matter. She looked at him. They were right about my board members. They were right about my COO. They were almost right about me. There were moments in the weeks before the accident where I thought about exactly what Kern meant when she asked if I was prepared for the pushback, about whether it was worth it. She stopped. But it wasn't almost right about you, Daniel said. No, she said. It wasn't. She held his gaze. And it wasn't right about you. He looked at his coffee. Daniel, she said, I need to say this, and I need you to actually hear it and not redirect it. She waited until he looked up. What you did cost you something real. The invisibility you had built your name is going to be in the investigation documents. Not publicly, not in the press, but in federal records. People who look carefully enough will find it. She paused. I know you know this. I know you accepted it. But I want to say directly out loud that I understand what it meant, that I don't take it lightly, that it mattered. I was quiet. You gave something up, she said. For me. And for children you will never meet. And the only thing you asked for in return was that Lily stay safe. She paused. I want you to know that I know what that means. He sat with that for a moment. Let it be said the way she needed to say it. She stayed safe, he said finally. Yes, Olivia said, because of choices you made. A beat. Not just last month, every day for 6 years. He looked at his hands around the mug. He thought of Rachel the way he sometimes did when something was large enough to require her. He thought of the specific promise he'd made. Stay, be present. Let Lily have you, and how that promise had shaped every choice in the years since, including it turned out the ones he'd made in the last month. I want to ask you something, he said. Ask, she said. When this is over, when the indictments come through, when the FDA approval moves, when all the legal machinery finishes what it started. He paused. What does your life look like? She looked at him carefully. Not a question she'd been asked before in that form. I've been thinking about that, she said. I spent 12 years building Bennett MedTech around a mission that I believed in completely, and then I spent 18 months watching people dismantle it from inside, and I had to fight to get it back. She was quiet for a moment. I still believe in the mission, more than ever. But I've been thinking about what I want the rest of it to look like, the parts that aren't the company, and I've been thinking about the fact that I almost died in a river in Kentucky, she said. And that the man who pulled me out of that river went home and gave his daughter grape-flavored Tylenol and never told anyone. She paused. And that the whole shape of my life looked different to me after that. Not catastrophically different. I'm not someone who has a near-death experience and quits everything to find herself on a mountain somewhere. A small smile. I'm too practical for that. He almost smiled back. I noticed. But different, she said. Quieter in some ways. More certain about what actually matters. She looked at him. I keep coming back to that, to what actually matters. He looked at her across the kitchen table. Outside, the December light was steady and clear and unhurried. The croissants were good, he said. She looked at him for a second. Then she laughed, a real one, not the professional version, not the controlled version, but something that came from being genuinely caught off guard in a pleasant way, and it changed her entire face. They were, she agreed. My friend will be pleased to know. Tell her Lily endorses them, he said. That's a meaningful endorsement. It absolutely is, Olivia said. I could tell. They sat for another hour. The conversation moved the way good conversations do between people who have already done the difficult part, through the details of what came next for her company, through a story she told about her brother coaching Little League that made him laugh, through a question she asked about how he'd ended up in Harlan specifically, and he answered honestly, through a question he asked about her parents, that she answered with the same honesty she'd brought to everything. At 11:15, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Greer. Lily is showing me her horse book. I believe I'll be hearing a great deal about horses. She said to tell you she's coming at 11:30 exactly. He showed Olivia the text. She read it and smiled. She negotiated the time with you, she said, and then kept it exactly. She always does, he said. She negotiates hard, and then she's completely reliable. I have no idea where she gets that. Olivia looked at him. I wonder, she said. He got up and put the coffee cups in the sink. Olivia stood and put on her jacket. She picked up her keys. I should be on the road before Lily gets back, she said. I don't want to. You can stay, he said. If you want to, she'd like that. She looked at him. Something in the look had layers to it, the careful assessment, yes, always that. But under it, something warmer and less defended than the version he'd met on a riverbank in November. I have a board call at 2, she said. Then you should head back, he said. I should. Neither of them moved for a moment. Daniel, she said. I'm going to be in Kentucky again in January. There's a supplier meeting in Lexington that I've been putting off. She paused. I thought I might drive through Harlan. If that's... She stopped. I'm asking if that's okay. He looked at her. This woman who had walked into his garage a month ago and changed the architecture of his quiet life. Not by demanding anything, but by being exactly what she was. Direct, precise, stubborn in the right ways, and underneath all the professional armor, genuinely good. Yeah, he said. That's okay. She nodded. Something resolved in her expression. January, she said. January, he confirmed. She went to the door. He walked her out to her car. The December air hit them both cold clean, the kind that made everything feel slightly more real. She opened the driver's side door, stopped, turned back. Can I ask you one more thing? She said. Yeah. That night, when you pulled me out. She looked at him directly. In the moment when you went in, when you found me, were you scared? He thought about it honestly, the way the question deserved. Not in the water, he said. In the water, I was just working. A pause. After. When you were breathing on your own, and I was sitting next to you in the rain, and I knew you were going to be okay. He paused. That's when I was scared. Because that's when there was room for it. She was very still. What were you scared of? That I'd been a half-second slower, he said simply. She held his gaze for a moment. Something passed through her expression that was beyond words, past the range of what professional precision could contain. Thank you, she said. Not for the first time. But it sounded different this time. Like it was the one that meant all the others. Drive safe, he said. Different road this time. Always, she said, and she meant it as more than driving directions. She got in. He watched the car pull out of the lot, turn onto the street, and disappear around the corner. He stood for a moment in the December air. The street was quiet. A dog barked 2 houses down and then stopped. Somewhere a car started. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary Saturday in a small Kentucky town. He was nobody in particular here. He had a garage to open on Monday. A transmission from the Kowalski family that would arrive Tuesday. A bicycle chain that was finally fixed. A daughter who was going to come home at 11:30 exactly and tell him everything she'd learned about a craft project and cross-examine him about whether he'd eaten lunch. The investigation would continue without him. The indictments would come. The FDA meeting was in February. Dr. Park was in her lab. The technology would reach the children it was meant to reach 12 months from now or 14, and none of those children would know his name, and he would never know theirs. That was fine. That was in fact exactly fine. He heard the gate at Mrs. Greer's open down the street. Lily came around the corner at backpack, bouncing, holding something. A craft project, some kind of painted wooden thing at arm's length in front of her, with the careful pride of a person transporting something fragile and important. She saw him standing by the garage, and her face broke into the expression he had been seeing for 8 years, and that still every single time landed somewhere in his chest like it was the first. Daddy, she called across the street. I made a thing. Come look at the thing. He crossed his arms. What kind of thing? A horse thing, she said. Obviously. He walked toward her. She met him halfway the way she always did, holding out the painted wooden horse that was small and a little uneven and completely perfectly hers. "What do you think?" she said. I took it carefully, turned it over in his hands, looked at it with the same seriousness he brought to all her questions, because she deserved serious answers. "I think it's the best horse I've ever seen," he said. She beamed. "Mrs. Greer said the same thing," she said. "So you're both right." He handed it back. She tucked it under her arm with the authority of someone securing a valuable item. She fell into step beside him. "Was your friend nice?" she said. "Yes," he said. "She was. Is she coming back?" He thought about January, about a dark green Subaru on a Kentucky road taking the long way through Harlan, about a woman who had learned to trust something she couldn't calculate and had been right. "In January," he said. Lily nodded, satisfied. "Good," she said. "She should come for pancakes." "I'll let her know," he said. "Buttermilk," Lily said. "Not regular." "I'll make that very clear," he said. She laughed, and he held the door open, and they went inside. The house was warm and quiet, and exactly what it had always been: a small life, carefully built, tended with intention and love, and the knowledge that the most valuable things are the ones that require no audience. Daniel Carter had never been a man who needed the world to know his name. He had been a soldier when that was what was needed. He had been a mechanic when that was what fit. He had been a father every single day without exception, in the ways that counted, and the ways that were invisible, and the ways that Lily would understand only much later, when she was old enough to look back and see the shape of all the choices he'd made for her. He had gone into a river in the dark because a person needed help, and he had stayed when the situation required it. And he had given up the safety of his invisibility because the alternative was letting something wrong continue. No one had given him a medal. No press release mentioned his name. The federal case file that contained his information was sealed at a classification level that would remain sealed. He was still nobody in particular in Harlan County, Kentucky. He was still the mechanic at Carter's Auto who fixed your car right the first time and didn't overcharge. He was still the man who picked his daughter up from school and remembered the grape-flavored Tylenol and read to her at night and held the door. And on a rainy November night, when everything else had been stripped away, and there was nothing left but one choice, he had made the right one. Not because anyone was watching, not because there was anything in it for him, but because that was who Daniel Carter had always been underneath the silence and the small-town routine and the 6 years of careful invisibility. The man nobody noticed was the man who mattered most when it counted. And that not the medals, not the classified file, not the grateful text messages from a CEO in a dark green Subaru, that was the thing he could live with. That was enough.